Hello, and welcome to Hospitality and the Infinite Game, a podcast series focused on answering one simple question. What type of hospitality industry do we actually want to create? In these episodes, Michael and David discuss big ideas that might set the foundation for a different model of success. A model which would allow us to piece together a bold new way forward, where our businesses can thrive whilst making a positive impact on people, communities and the planet. We make no claims to have all the answers, far from it in fact, but we hope these conversations might just get you thinking. We are learning, and hopefully you'll learn with us. So join us. The game is afoot, and it's an infinite one.
Well, welcome to our first episode of the Hospitality on the Infinite Game. And we are lucky to be here the first time the studio is used here at Plus X Innovation Hub in Brighton, and they have been so kind to borrow that to us today. And with me is my partner in crime in this special podcast series, David Chenery.
Hey, Michael.
And you have, we talked about it before. I think we talked about when you were on the Hospitality Maverick podcast. We talked about that you spent your youth in Brighton, and actually we're next to your old university.
Yeah, I know. It's so weird coming back after 20 years and seeing they've turned the car park into a building site and they're putting some high-rise student accommodation on there. But, progress always has one direction, it seems. And, no, it's great to be back in Brighton. It still feels like a good place to be, and exciting to have that as the background for our conversations today of trying to change the world.
Yeah, making the world a better place, and the house we're in, or the office building here by Plus X, is actually a sustainable building, and that fits really well what we're going to be talking about today. So it's not about David and me and our life before and after. It's actually about some very big challenges in the world, and I often refer it to that we all have a responsibility to solve big problems in the world, and the UN puts it up very nicely with the 17 goals of development and challenge in the world, and we all as a business have to participate in that. But in a way, to before we dive down in all the details, I think sometimes as David and I have talked about, we also need to understand the bigger picture, and what we are trying to do is take some of some very complicated things that's out there, and especially around sustainability, doing the right thing, purpose, and so on. And then in the coming conversation, we will try to give our view on that. And let's start with the Infinite Game, David. What is that? Because I think that's quite central to all the conversations we're going to have over the next 6 episodes.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of the origin story of this mini podcast series, isn't it? It's how we started discussing things and thinking there's a chance here to look at things in a different way. And if we are looking to create a different model for the industry in the future, what do we need to do to think about the foundations of that in a different way? And it comes from the book The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. I mean, most people know him, as some people dismiss him as a bit of a kind of self-help sort of a guru psychologist, but some really interesting ideas. And this book, The Infinite Game, is something where he champions what seems like a simple idea, but it's a move from the pursuit of trying to be the best to always trying to be better. And I think that's, in his words, it's a way of moving from a finite mindset towards an infinite mindset, which is kind of the goal he sees in driving businesses that have purpose beyond themselves, which is what hooked, I think, both of us into this conversation.
Yeah, and I think also this thing you say, be better, and I think David Hyatt also talk about it from Hygiene. He talk about that 1% of improvement you can do, and it takes a long time to build a business that's sustainable. And sustainable, in my way, is also a business that thinks long term. There's never, we're not done tomorrow. We're not selling tomorrow. Exactly. We're building a business not to sell it. Yeah. We're actually building a business to do it different. And the best example I can give people out there, you're thinking, what kind of business doing that? Like Patagonia. They're an activist business. They donate 1% of their profit yearly to activism, and activism could be something around election, which they are very involved in the moment, and have a very interesting message in their in their closing and their small closing marks right now. So, but you can go and Google that, and we'll talk about that later in the series as well. But again, I think it's that, having that mindset that actually it's not about just short term, but it's also about what you can do long term, and it's more than just making a profit. It's actually making an impact on people, community, and the planet in a positive way.
Yeah, and I think that's where this is how this idea, the long-term thinking, got us towards asking those sorts of questions. I mean, the key principles in the book is that if you focus on trying to be the best, it's very easy for your eyes, anyone running a business knows that just doing that is hard. And it's very easy to get your eyes drawn down from the horizon to the quarterly target, the weekly target. And you end up, or not you always, but there are many examples he gives of businesses where you then end up making these short-term decisions that to try and get to a quarterly profit target, or to that horrendous phrase, create shareholder value, which really means create money for other people, whatever, whichever way you do it. And that means that if you're doing that, you're trying to say be the best, hit your targets for the quarter, but there's an idea that then you're done when you hit those. And I think that is the problem. What we want to do is look at how businesses can be based with a much longer term vision, a longer term strategy, rather than the issues of trying to do something for 3 years and sell it and move on. I just think it's almost thinking more of what we do as citizens, our roles. We have a kind of duty not to try and build a business, make ourselves rich, sell it and then watch it collapse and sort of shrug our shoulders. I mean, that's just not responsible. I mean, and I think we need to look at how we can do that in a much better way. And I think he also looks at some other interesting things in there about how also when people start looking to hit those quarterly targets, and that becomes the kind of the be all and end all, or what drives the culture. It would be too simplified to give it a black or white kind of evil company, good company. I mean, that obviously is there's so much nuance in there, but you can often, if you're chasing short-term targets, get a concept of what he calls ethical fading, which I think is a nice way of saying people start sort of losing their values and cutting corners, and the end starts to justify the means of, we can just cut a corner on this, and we can treat a person this way, and we've got to make all these redundancies because we've got to keep our profit margin at a certain level. And it's a really interesting reflection on how you really, what kind of business do you want to lead, and what kind of leader do you want to be, and that really is the core takeout for me from that book. And then it really, if you think about that, it gives you an interesting perspective on some of the issues that hospitality has often had. I mean, if you look at the casual dining crash, from a few years ago, that was built by a founder would start a business and maybe slowly or possibly quickly grow that to sort of 3 units. And then they would get some funding from a VC who, to meet their own 5-year targets of return on investment, will try and grow that to 9 units. And then they'll go, great. And then they'll sell that to someone else who will try and grow it to 30 units. And along that way, inevitably, like Jamie's Italian, you might start with something that's excellent. But because of the short-term goals to kind of hit targets and revenue and cut costs, bad decisions get made, and you scale something excellent to something mediocre. You don't scale the internal processes, you don't keep the quality of ingredients, you don't take on rents at a decent level, because it's more important to get the numbers up and profitability will come. There's a kind of strange bubble that these things that these turn into, and then something happens in the economy and many of them collapse. And I think that for me was the interesting takeout for that. What do you think about?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I made a bit of notes because you said a lot of great things there. I think it's about the intent again, because it's not black and white in my world playing the Infinity game. Because in the moment we all dealt some very difficult cards.
Yes.
We have to deal with in the industry. If you are in the industry in different ways, as myself, as a both operator but also advisor, but you can decide how you play that game.
Yes.
You can't always decide the cards. So we know the the government's going to give us some cards today again, but we can't choose what cards we're giving. We're given some cards, and we can decide how we play the games from there on. And it's the intent, because I think Danny Meyer said it very well in the beginning of the pandemic, with somebody I think that really reflects this as a business person and the way he's built his business over not just 10 years, but 30 to 40 years, decades. And he said that how do you, and he called it, put people first when you have to make them redundant. It's an absolutely, but that's a great example of in the right mindset about the long term, and actually asking that difficult question in the boardroom instead of saying, what do we do to get a plus on the bottom line?
Yeah.
Because if he solves that problem, he will solve the bottom line.
Yeah, exactly.
Over time.
And I think the interesting thing is genuine long-term thinking, for me, you see how it is not, you're not forfeiting, short-term problems and thinking. You're absolutely right. It would be really easy to stand here and be idealistic and say, hey, we should all think about the long term, and don't worry about the short-term problems. No, there are a lot of short-term problems, and they're hard, and you've got to make decisions weekly on what you do, and you need to keep culture and performance, and you need to energize people, and that is there are short-term elements in there, but you have to be surely moving towards something of value, where you're making a difference to the world or your community, whatever scale your ambition is. I think you have a duty to think about it in that way. I think, and it would also be easy to say, well, again, greedy corporations, you want to be big, kind of shake your fist at those people, and I don't think that's the case either. For me, success, money, growth, those are not bad things. I don't think they're bad at all. It's just that when they come to consume and drive people entirely, they become very warped drivers, right? For me, I think it's almost like money is a bit like the sun, right? So if there is no sun, it's a very cold, dark existence. A nice, bright, sunny day is an enjoyable place to be. We need to have enough money to have that. But if you stare at the sun, you will go blind. And I think a lot of people have been caught staring at the sun. I think that's the problem.
I think that was a very good way, because I always say that either money is energy to fuel your journey, and money is also the tool to build something that actually solve bigger problems than making a profit. So great working condition for your people, and great experience for your customers, first of all, because that's what business. Then you take care of your near communities, and then you can get involved with the planet. And I think one of the things that's, and we will talk about that in, I'm sure, in the donut economy, but one of the things is that really has, in a way, made business leaders, and including myself, work over the last maybe 10, 20 years, is that Freeman thinking around growth, GDP, that we have to have continuous growth, then we solve all problems in the world. Exactly. The problem is because it's not a law, it's an idea. Yes. But we all bought into this idea. And now, as the world we ended up in with a pandemic, Brexit, all these things, all these big things happening in the world, climate change and so on, we also need other ideas for how we think business. And exactly. we actually, we need to think about when we have a business that will have waves of impact on other parts of society as a citizen, as well, as you said.
Yeah. Exactly. It's a system, isn't it? I think that's for me is the key to the idea of, we talk about infinite game and finite game. The point is long-term thinking forces you to understand the system within which you exist and your business exists. And you mentioned Danny Meyer, and he's kind of masterful for that, because when you read, Setting the Table is like the Bible for anyone in the hospitality industry, and he comes across both as a very good human and a very good businessman, because he understood that his restaurants existed in a community, and he had to nourish that community around him and look after his staff to create a culture where they could be amazing at hospitality and look after people. And, people reward that by coming to your business to work and to eat. Yeah. And, that seems like a really simple idea. But, that idea that we are embedded in a system, I think is really interesting. And then, we're going to cover these in other episodes, but donut economics is fascinating for blowing apart the oversimplified view we've had of economics for a long time. Anyone who's had that kind of nagging idea that this idea, eternal GDP growth can't be a good thing. It's a really interesting, fascinating read. But yeah, so for me, systems, like understanding that we exist in this complex system, just seems like it should be such a simple thing for us to understand. But the day-to-day realities of, us running businesses mean that we simplify it down, right? So often reality has to exist on a spreadsheet, because our minds can't hold that many pieces of information together. So that process of kind of simplifying, because we're humans, results in us maybe overly focusing on very single metrics. I think that's an interesting.
When you say that, it leads me to something else that I often see in or outside hospitality, is that a business starts out with some starts out just because they want to make money, but majority of them actually starts out because there is some kind of purpose deeper, because this is also about the intent and the purpose you set out on your journey as the entrepreneur. There's always somebody that starts a business, and it's often something bigger than themselves.
Yes.
And that in me is playing the infinite game. It doesn't have to be to save the world. I'm going to repeat that because often people think it is. It's actually, it could be you just want to make the best place to work in the world. Yeah. That's an amazing contribution to a better world. And often what happens then growth kicks in. Yeah. Freeman's thinking kicks in. We need to grow. You get, it's not all VCs, there's evil or private equity, but then there's money involved, and then suddenly it becomes all about the growth and not about the impact, and thereby the profit goes out in the end, because it's going to be very short-lived, because it's going to lose its soul. And people don't join organizations or buy from organizations because they're growing and looking beautiful with beautiful fit-outs. They buy them because they have some kind of emotional connection to them. Definitely. It makes me feel in a special way, so therefore I love and support them no matter what happens. And I think that's what we need to think in again in hospitality as well. We need to think about what's happening in the big picture and how we play that role, and what intent is our organization. Because I know there's a lot out of the hospitality organization out there actually deeply care for things. If it's homeless people they want to help to get fed, or it's the frontline people. The hospitality industry have been amazing in this situation. You're thinking about an industry tanking, and actually all the good stuff it's done while it's tanking. I don't know the banking industry. I don't know if the banking industry would do that.
I saw an interesting kind of A-board outside. I think someone had posted it on LinkedIn, and it was talking about being in the hospitality industry now is the equivalent of watching the orchestra play while the Titanic was sinking. Yeah, it was kind of very still good. Giving to the end and giving that kind of quality. And I mean, hopefully the Titanic isn't sinking. I mean, it's pretty challenging times, and there are going to be a lot of casualties. But I think it comes back to something I was even saying, a couple of years ago, before all of the virus that shall not speak its name that is going around at the moment. We don't need more restaurants. We need better restaurants. The reason, if you actually look at the reason why the profit margins in hospitality are not very good, is because there's actually way too much competition of people doing very similar things. That's why you can't, monopolies make profits. Google makes a profit because no one can compete with them. So whereas the market of restaurants is often you've got a lot of them together doing relatively similar stuff, in a similar format. So we don't need more, but we just need better ones. And I think that's, for me, what I care about, us trying to ask the questions to find the foundation for that, because it can be easy, as we've said, to dip into an idealist way of thinking and just sort of not really engage with the hard reality of making decisions and how you make that work, and kind of complex ideas of systems thinking and economics. And we need to dive into those, and that is hopefully what the next 5 episodes of this are going to be covering.
Yeah, and it's also trying to seed that kind of thinking that it's not about just plowing more money in before actually you understand what it is that you want to achieve in this. It's terrible out there, and we're all gonna have something we're gonna lose within that. But we need to then to use this, restricted framework we're in to really innovate and actually start to think about things in, how do we actually become part of the bigger system as we're going to be talking about in donut economy? How do we actually, as an industry or individual restaurant, and I've talked a lot about before, both on the Hospitality Mavericks show and also I interviewed Carl from Mushroom here in Brighton, which is selling sushi, and they're selling, fish, but they are fighting against overfishing in the oceans, and they're spending a lot of energy with that. And they're a single restaurant, and they're sending circle of influence out there. And not everybody should do that, but that's their thing. But how do you find that thing that really, when you come out on the other side in one format or the other, how do you then, in a way, revisit your maybe your purpose and finding out how do I actually create more circles of influence that's more than profit, and how do I actually know, when do I know when I'm big enough? Because as you say, we don't need more restaurants, we need better ones. And actually really great restaurants, as they scale sometimes, it goes so fast that actually goes out of them. They were really good,
exactly,
and now they are become really bad. And I can remember, Caluccio is a great example of when I tried that in my early days traveling into London. It was absolutely amazing. But something happened on that journey, and I haven't been in Caluccio, so I don't know what happened. But something happened, and customers and employees lost the love for the business, which was very big at that point, because that was an intent. And then the intent and the purpose, without me knowing, was something about taking Italy to the UK, which they did really well.
Yeah, and then they lost it because you get on the treadmill of growth, and that becomes the driver.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. It's the question of what purpose and what drives you. The ambition doesn't have to be to become, a global company all over the world. It could be that you simply want to open a really great, brunch spot in your local community because you don't think there's anyone doing it, where you can also introduce kids to cooking and do cooking classes, and introduce them to the idea of nutrition and where their food comes from. It can be a small, wonderful ambition that as a business can do really well locally and have a buzz around it. You don't have to then go, right, I've got that working, let's do 20 others. You might have some opportunities in adjacent towns, and there might be a journey you go on. But I think it's understanding, for me, what that core purpose was. As you say, if you've just gone, well, let's start a restaurant business to make money, you clearly haven't been in the restaurant industry very long, because that is a bit of like playing roulette, isn't it? I mean, that is not
go and build a tech product instead. Or something.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I think there is we should be holding up as examples the people that want to do a small great thing, as much as people like Nisha Katona, who has got Mowgli and is doing a great thing and scaling that, in as far as she's got at the moment, and trying to hold on to the values, that she holds so dear in that business. We always see bigger as better. It's a kind of natural comparison, isn't it? And I think it's more about purpose, of understanding why you're doing it, and then applying the clarity of long-term vision, where you are getting better every year. That Japanese idea, Kaizen, of constant improvement. Constant improvement doesn't necessarily mean getting better. You look at the P&L for this year and go, right, how can we be 10% better? It's not necessarily that kind of growth. How are you growing your impact in the community? How are you, working with better suppliers? How are you, all of those things that feed into the system. They're like the roots of the tree that feed into the fact that you will have a healthy tree that's still going to be there in 5 years' time. And I think that's where I get kind of excited and kind of obsessed about.
Yeah, and I think also it's about, again, you say, profit is important.
Yeah,
because no profit, no business.
Yeah,
I totally agree with that. But you still also have to think about, how do we then use that profit to sustain the business as long as possible? How do we actually make a business that will outlive the founders?
Yeah,
because we don't have many of them in the restaurant industry. And I think also it goes back to when restaurant became commercialized. We actually forgot about what it's actually about. If you think about before the whole restaurant commercialization, the owner potentially ran that restaurant for decades, or it was actually handed down in families.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not saying we need to go back to that, but there's some of that thinking about actually it's a vehicle for, feeding yourself and making sure but also it's a vehicle for being part of the community. And I think, it will never be the same. It will be a new world. But there is some of that thinking about that. Why exactly you're setting out for a restaurant beside just feeding the local neighborhood, paying yourself a salary, and growing the business, and hopefully sell it. And I also think that era, in a way, it's going to be very small amount of the market that can do that. So we also have to remember the biggest part of the market is not chain restaurants still.
No.
It's independent restaurants.
Yeah, of course.
And again, I think they will have an amazing opportunity to do something, because many of them are already doing things. It's just not on the radar. But the big guys in the industry, because they set the tone and the direction of the industry, has to tap into that and understand that. And it doesn't mean that it has to be fluffier talking about purpose, because purpose in a way is how people feel and believe in the business. And I think too many of them actually haven't. They maybe done a session on it and written it and put it in the drawer, but it hasn't really been implemented into the business that way, because it's about how you make decisions. It's your book of culture in a way, and many people don't take that work and get it done, and actually, maybe do it once, but then they put it in the drawer and they never take it up again. Because actually the way you believe in how the world is and should operate and how you use your business to conduct yourself, if you have done that once in the early days in some kind of format, even if you've written it down or not, if you revisit that with many founders of a restaurant business, you'll find out the intent was very different and where they ended. And I think that intent, you need to ask question now, what do we set out to do? And can we get back to that? And can we go on that journey? Because it's a journey and it will never finish, because there's no end goal.
No. There is. We all die. But
we all die.
That's not a very happy ending. But I think, you're right. I think it is a journey. And I think it's about people understanding what they want to do. I mean, what future do you want to create? The future is not just going to happen to us. We have the ability to do something and try something and then see how everyone responds to that. And I think that's the excitement of being an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur is the most trendy job description going around at the moment. Start something, do something. But what are you doing it for? What is the point of that? And I think that is a question that people just need to ask more of, I think, in really simple terms, to understand how they sit in that system.
So maybe we should. What is your purpose? Why have you set up your business? Why are you becoming?
That's a fascinating question, isn't it? So I mean, obviously we're architects and interior designers and we do branding and graphics, as those are the services, and we about 4 years ago decided that hospitality was an industry we loved and to both work in and just be in. And that's who we chose to serve. And then over the time of studying that industry and becoming, to be honest, I feel more like I'm part of the hospitality industry than the design industry now, just realized that there are challenges around sustainability, and that it's interesting because I've been doing a lot of talking about sustainability, and we write a lot about sustainability and the restorative restaurant project we're doing and all that sort of stuff. And some people now introduce me as, David, he's really passionate about sustainability. And actually, I'm not. I'm not passionate about sustainability. I'm passionate about taking my friends or loved ones to a lovely restaurant and having some nice food and environment that I really enjoy, and that experience, or traveling to a great hotel, abroad. That's what excites me. Sustainability is like oxygen. It's unfortunately we're just not dealing with it. So I'm sort of obsessed with trying to help the experiences that I love still be available to everyone in 20, 30, 40, 50 years time. So that's my driver, and that's our company's driver, is to try and help, first of all, understand how we can even deal with that problem, and then show as many people as possible how we get there and bring them on that journey with us. So yes, I guess that's my purpose. What's yours?
Oh, now I'm just sending it back. So it actually comes from born and raised in the industry and a big love for the industry. And I felt at a certain point, probably 10 years ago, there's something not working. It was a feeling I was seeing. We were already stretched 10 years ago and working in the industry and making decisions, on people's life, and the ability not to pay them, a premium salary. It's probably started out with the employee experience more than they started out with anything else. And on that journey, I also found out there were some big problems in the world. And the purpose of what we do at Hospitality Mavericks is trying to do what we do now right here now, is actually trying to look a bit ahead and see if we don't change and we just do as we always have done, which I think is a common theme in the industry. It has been. I know we're very good to adapt when under pressure and all that. I really acknowledge that, and we are incredible, in that kind of way, how we quickly can come together on things. But my purpose in all this is actually just trying to make a better industry before it's too late. And I was talking about something coming a couple of years. I didn't see a pandemic coming. That's like the nuclear bomb. It's Chernobyl. The restaurant industry is a bit like the Chernobyl situation. I don't hope we're going to be deserted. I don't think it's going to go that far, but it's a bit like the same kind of thing back in the 80s. And I think that thing about I actually want to build an industry, to be proud of working in and be part of. And people talk about in a good way, because the industry, as we all know, in the industry, we love it. But there's a lot of people that don't think this industry is something special. It's not something for a career. It's not something I really, something I dip in and out of. And that's an element of that. But also it's an amazing industry which you're in it. The people is absolutely amazing. But I would like to keep that and restore that industry I started out in, which I think have lost a bit of its way. So the purpose is, in a way, is try to inspire people to build businesses that create spaces that both the employees and the customers love in the end.
Yeah, definitely.
It comes a bit back to you when you come in and feel that experience. You will not feel that experience if the employees doesn't love it.
No, I agree.
Nobody's going to love it. And it actually means that we need to step a bit back. It's not fixing the employee journey. We actually need to step back to what we've been talking about. How do we play this game?
Yeah.
Because I could also say, I'm out, this industry is falling together. I'm out, I'm going to do something else. I've actually tried to leave the industry a couple of times, but it's in there. I need to go on this journey. I need to be part of this industry. And I definitely now also have to own the problem we have, because I need to be part of fixing that problem. So that the purpose also there, if you start digging down other things, you need to own problems. And you haven't seen Patagonia stopping talking about the environment, even though they are many others also under pressure probably in this. I don't think that people are buying a lot of clothes right now because we're not going out. So again, it's that thing about you in it no matter what, and you follow through. And it's not about resilience. It's about actually a bigger intent and purpose. And it doesn't mean you get everything right when you know your purpose.
No, definitely not. We are all on the journey of learning, and I think I guess we should probably wrap up this episode. Yeah. I think it's really interesting to think about that whole piece. So the infinite game, the idea that the basis for this conversation and these deep subjects is to find a foundational set of thinking and principles that encourage us to think longer, to think deeper, and not get swayed or nudged into that short-term view, so that we can build a better industry, right? I mean, that's the foundation of what we're trying to do. And certainly the next 5 episodes, I hope we can lay out a primer on all of the subjects that we found and the resources that are interesting that hopefully everyone can learn from.
Yeah, and I think it's very important that we are not futurists. We are not the experts. We are just the students, as you said, and that's also, I'm a student of the industry. I still are, even though I spent my lifetime in it. And it's about, as you say, trying to go in some of these sometimes academic subjects.
Yeah,
sometimes
I think so.
Some people overcomplicate. So how can we take donut economics down, circular economy, talk about B Corps, which is a very buzzword now. How can we talk a bit more about purpose? But purpose is also a difficult thing to talk about. I heard a conversation yesterday on the Good Business Festival where they talked about purpose. I could see even the people that's doing it, they can feel. It's a feeling more than you can come up with this perfect algorithm and explanation for it. And then we're going to talk about profit and purpose, hand in hand. And then we're also going to talk about there's no planet B.
Yes.
So our lovely planet is under pressure as well, and what can we do? And we're all going to do in the light of what can hospitality do and apply to do. We've tried to, in these subjects, try to go down and say, what can you do as a business? And we try to give example of our business from outside, but also inside the business.
Definitely.
That will do that. So I think it's a very good place to leave it, and let's continue the conversation and make a better industry for people, communities, and the planet.
Great stuff. Just the beginning. Let's go.
So that's the end for today. Thank you so much for listening. We really hope that it sparked off an idea or two for you. We'll make sure to include any links and references in the show notes, but if you'd like to start a conversation, you can email michael@hospitalitymavericks.com or david@objectspaceplace.com. You can also find them roaming around on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect. Finally, if you're enjoying this series, please consider letting the world know by honouring us with a 5-star rating or even giving us a review. Okay, goodbye for now. Catch you next time for more discussions on hospitality and the infinite game.